The Young and the Restless spoilers shock Friday's full October 31st, 2025. Jack Abbott had spent his life defending Jabot from threats both external and internal, but this one felt different. It wasn't just another hostile takeover or petty Newman vendetta, it was a war being fought in the shadows, coded into stolen algorithms and whispered through encrypted servers. When Kane Ashby delivered his warning that Victor Newman might now possess the very AI system once designed for Jabot's competitive edge, Jack's blood ran cold. Victor didn't need cosmetics or beauty formulas to hurt Jabot, he needed leverage, and if that leverage came in the form of stolen artificial intelligence, it could dismantle everything the Abbott family had built. Billy Abbott arrived at the mansion expecting a routine argument about direction and discipline, but the look in Jack's eyes told him this was no ordinary crisis. The brothers had been through every conceivable betrayal, and yet the specter of Victor's influence still made them unite on instinct. Jack laid out what Kane had told him, his voice low, deliberate, as if saying the words too loudly would give them power. Victor, it seemed, wasn't working alone. Jack's tone sharpened when he named the possible accomplice, Phyllis Summers. The room shifted then, as though the very air carried her perfume and her chaos. Billy ran a hand through his hair, torn between disbelief and inevitability. Of course Phyllis would be involved. She was too smart, too impulsive, and too desperate for relevance after the string of failed ventures that had left her reputation bruised. Jack, who still carried a complicated tenderness for Phyllis, wanted to believe she was being manipulated. Billy, who knew her brand of self-destruction better than anyone, wasn't so sure. If Victor has that AI, Phyllis either gave it to him or she's playing both sides, Billy warned. She's capable of stealing it outright. Jack didn't disagree, but the word capable landed heavily between them. There were still parts of him that remembered Phyllis as an ally, the woman who once saved Jabot from ruin and pulled him back from despair. That memory warred with the evidence in front of him. The brothers argued strategy in the dim glow of the Abbott study, where generations of family portraits seemed to watch their every move. Billy's natural defiance softened for once into collaboration. "If we do this together," he said finally, "there's no fight we can't win." It was a truce born of necessity, but also of blood, the realization that every time the Abbotts divided, the world outside devoured them. Jack agreed, though his gaze drifted toward the window where the city lights flickered like distant warnings. He asked Billy to find Phyllis, to offer her anything that might bring her back to their side. Billy didn't hide his doubt. "Are you sure we even want to?" he asked. "It's Phyllis, Jack. When she walks into a room, peace walks out." Still, he promised he would find her. Meanwhile, at Crimson Lights, Sharon watched the brothers' turmoil unfold from a distance. She had been through her own share of corporate battles and moral compromises, and seeing the Abbotts dragged into another Newman-fueled mess triggered a familiar fatigue. When she crossed paths with Jack later that evening, she asked the question that lingered in every bystander's mind, "What did you all do to deserve this?" Jack didn't answer immediately. His silence was both confession and defense. "We built something worth stealing," he said finally. Back in Los Angeles, a different thread began to tighten. Nikki and Victoria Newman's sudden arrival wasn't a social visit, it was reconnaissance. The mother-daughter duo claimed they were there to support Noah and check on business prospects, but their real agenda was to assess Victor's new dealings and the tech quietly circulating between Newman Enterprises and its West Coast partners. Victoria, still haunted by her own entanglements with men like Mitch Bacall, recognized the signs of another power play disguised as business expansion. She wasn't wrong. At the same time, Kyle Abbott was pursuing his own mission, one that skirted the line between curiosity and obsession. Audra Charles, with her poise and enigmatic charm, had re-entered his life at precisely the wrong moment, when his judgment was compromised by both ego and unresolved pain. Sienna Bacall, the mysterious insider who claimed to know the full truth about Audra's past, had promised him information that could change everything. Kyle didn't know whether that meant love or ruin, but he was willing to risk both. As the investigations overlapped, a pattern began to emerge. Every road, every secret, every betrayal traced back to one nexus: Victor Newman's invisible hand manipulating rivals through stolen technology and emotional leverage. Jabot's AI wasn't just code, it was power, capable of predicting market shifts, controlling supply chains, and exposing vulnerabilities before competitors could react. In the wrong hands, it was a weapon. In Victor's, it was vengeance cloaked as innovation. Jack's next move was uncharacteristically cautious. He reached out to Diane Jenkins, half expecting her to tell him the lab servers had been breached. But nothing, no forced entry, no missing drives, no visible trace. That only deepened his unease. If the theft had already occurred, it must have been executed from within. He stared at the firewall reports and found himself thinking of Phyllis again, her ability to bypass systems, her flair for digital misdirection. Billy, returning from a failed attempt to locate her, confirmed what they both feared. Phyllis had vanished. No calls, no sightings, no trace. Elsewhere, Phyllis herself might have been weighing her options. Working with Victor could restore her fortune and credibility, but at the cost of every friendship she had left. She knew how to play double agent, flirt with danger, promise loyalty, and betray both sides just enough to stay alive. The question was whether this time she had gone too far. As Jack and Billy closed ranks, Nikki and Victoria's presence in Los Angeles hinted that even the Newmans were divided. Nikki's maternal instinct warred with loyalty to Victor, while Victoria's growing suspicion that her father's schemes would one day destroy them all threatened to tear the dynasty apart. Back in Genoa City, the Abbotts prepared for battle, not knowing whether Phyllis would return as an ally or an enemy. When Billy finally said, "I'll find her," Jack's voice softened. "I'm counting on you." It was both plea and warning, a reminder that in Genoa City, trust was always provisional, and even family alliances came with expiration dates. Somewhere far away, a server hummed quietly as data transferred from one encrypted network to another, proof that the war had already begun, and that none of them yet understood just how personal it would become. At the Genoa City Athletic Club, the air between Phyllis Summers and Kane Ashby shimmered with the kind of tension that only deception could create, half chemistry, half calculation. Phyllis had perfected the art of smiling through lies, but tonight her mask wavered in the candlelight. Kane, already suspicious of her convenient appearance and the way she always seemed to show up just before chaos unfolded, leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. He'd been drawn to her charm more than once, but this time, his instincts screamed that she wasn't here for flirtation. She was here to hide something. When Kane asked her why Victor Newman had come looking for him instead of Jack Abbott or Jabot, Phyllis gave a soft, incredulous laugh, the kind of laugh that could pass for sincerity if one didn't know her too well. "Victor's unpredictable," she said smoothly. "He probably just wanted to gauge your reaction." But Kane wasn't buying it. "You think I'm a fool," he countered, his accent sharpening. "If Victor wanted Jabot's AI, he'd go to Jack. You're the distraction, Phyllis. You always are." That cut deep, even if she refused to show it. For a split second, her eyes flickered with something that wasn't anger but fear that Kane might already know more than she intended. She recovered quickly, adjusting her tone to one of nonchalant amusement. "You think too highly of yourself, Kane. Not everything's about you." Yet, as she spoke, her fingers toyed with the edge of her glass, betraying her anxiety. Kane smirked, shaking his head. "You're lying, Red. I told Jack and Diane that the AI was stolen." "You didn't expect that, did you?" Phyllis froze mid-sip. The news hit her like a slap, Jack knew. The very secret she had spent weeks burying was now crawling back toward daylight. She turned her head slightly, as though trying to process the words. "Why would you do that?" she asked, her voice just a touch too sharp. "Because I wanted to see who would panic," Kane replied, leaning closer. "And you just did." Phyllis exhaled slowly, forcing a faint smile. "No one needs to worry about Jack this time," she said, her voice softening into silk. Victor isn't after him. She let the next line hang like a dagger before twisting it. He's after you. Kane blinked, startled, but refused to show it. Whatever game you're playing, you're losing your touch, he muttered. You're shaking, Phyllis. That's not a good look on you. But he wasn't immune to her. The more she manipulated, the more he admired the nerve it took. You're one of the most infuriating, impossible, and damn it, intriguing women I've ever met, he admitted, his tone a mix of frustration and fascination. Phyllis met his gaze, her expression unreadable. That's what makes me dangerous, she whispered. Meanwhile, across town, the sterile quiet of the hospital contrasted brutally with the tension at GCAC. Nikki and Victoria Newman stepped into the waiting area, their heels clicking against polished tile as they found Nick and Sharon seated beneath the dim lights of exhaustion. They greeted each other quietly, no hugs, no small talk, just the heavy mutual understanding that comes from enduring too many family crises. Nikki asked if there had been any new word from the police, but Nick only sighed. I left another message for Detective Burrows, he said. Nothing yet. The frustration in his voice was palpable. The police were stalling, or worse, hiding something. Every unanswered call stretched the uncertainty into torment. Victoria, ever the pragmatist, placed a hand on her brother's shoulder. We'll find out soon enough, she said. Right now, you need rest. But Nick shook his head. No. I'm going back to the dark room. I need to talk to Sienna again. She's holding back. The mention of Sienna's name tightened Victoria's expression, memories of LA, of danger, of the chaos that followed that woman's orbit. Nikki exchanged a knowing look with her daughter before sighing. Let's get some coffee, she said softly, as though caffeine might soften the edges of their grief. As the three of them returned to the guest lounge, Sharon lagged behind, her composure slipping. The weight of it all, the endless suffering, the cycle of tragedy repeating itself, pressed down until her voice cracked. Why does this keep happening to our children, she whispered, her tears glinting under the sterile light. What did we ever do to deserve this? It was the kind of question that had no answer, one every parent in Genoa City had asked at some point. But in the cruel rhythm of soap opera fate, the answer was always the same, because the story must go on. Every redemption had to be earned through ruin, every miracle required a heartbreak to precede it. Sharon didn't know that, of course. She only knew the ache of losing control again, watching her son's future teeter between life and the next twist written by unseen hands. Victoria reached out gently, her voice low. We can't fall apart now, she said. Noah needs us strong when he wakes up. But the words felt hollow even as she said them. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered how much longer the Newman family could keep surviving one nightmare after another before something finally broke beyond repair. And in that same hospital, just floors above them, the faint rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor marked the seconds before the next inevitable revelation, a secret about bloodlines, betrayals, and revenge that would once again pull the Newmans, the Abbotts, and the restless souls of Genoa City into the same orbit of chaos. At the dark room in Los Angeles, the city's glossy veneer glimmered against the low neon lights that curved along the bar. Kyle Abbott walked in, the tan jacket he wore making him stand out among the locals who preferred dark tones and anonymity. He looked both out of place and self-assured, like a man who belonged everywhere and nowhere all at once. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Sienna Bacall, composed, magnetic, and visibly guarded. She was sipping something clear and cold, her posture precise enough to suggest she was expecting someone, though not necessarily him. Kyle approached with the kind of casual confidence that masks intent. Care for a drink, he asked, voice deceptively easy. Maybe you can tell me everything you know about Audra. Sienna's lips curved, but not into a smile. Funny, she said quietly. I was hoping you could tell me a few things. Like how well you know Noah Newman. Kyle leaned back, momentarily thrown off. Well enough, he said after a beat. He's my ex-brother-in-law. That detail hung between them, small but weighty, the kind of connection that could open doors, or close them permanently. Why? He asked, watching her eyes. How do you know him? Sienna looked away, toward the dim stage where a jazz trio played to half an audience. He's been to my club, she said. A few times. The phrasing was too careful. Kyle noticed the hesitation, the small catch in her tone that came from practiced restraint. That's all, he pressed. No other reason to be worried about him? Sienna exhaled, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. My husband and I were considering investing in his new venture, she said evenly. And yes, I feel terrible that he was there the night of the accident. The words were clean, rehearsed, and bloodless. They explained everything, yet nothing. Before Kyle could push further, the heavy doors swung open and another presence cut through the noise, Nick Newman, dark t-shirt, black leather jacket, eyes that carried exhaustion like armor. He took in the scene instantly, Kyle, standing too close to Sienna, the tension practically radiating from the table. Kyle, Nick said, his tone edged with disbelief. What are you doing here? Kyle didn't flinch. Asking Sienna about Holden Novak, he replied. The name dropped like a stone in still water. Nick's jaw tightened. Holden had become a ghost at the center of too many unanswered questions. Nick turned to Sienna, his voice firm but low. Mind if we talk alone? Kyle shook his head before she could respond. I'll be out of your way by tomorrow morning. Flight back to Genoa City's at 10. I'll wait at the bar. It was both a concession and a threat, the kind that said he wasn't done digging. As he moved away, Nick stepped closer to Sienna, lowering his tone. What did you tell the police? Sienna blinked, eyes widening with practiced innocence. They haven't spoken to me yet. Nick's expression darkened. That doesn't make sense. You were there the night Noah was hurt. You own the club. How have they not questioned you? His frustration cracked through his composure, the helpless anger of a father and brother who had spent weeks drowning in silence. Sienna placed her glass down with deliberate calm. They'll call when they're ready, she said. I'm not hiding anything, Nick. But her voice faltered on that last word, and he caught it, the tremor, the flicker of guilt that rippled beneath her polished exterior. He leaned closer. A man like Holden doesn't vanish without help, he said quietly. And a man like Mitch doesn't go after someone without reason. If you know something, you'd better say it now before this gets worse. Sienna's gaze darted briefly to where Kyle sat at the bar, pretending to check his phone but watching everything. The trap was tightening, and she knew it. Every lie told to protect her family was beginning to feed on itself. The truth about Holden, about Noah's accident, about what Mitch had done, and who had helped him, was closer than anyone realized. For now, though, she smiled faintly, lifting her glass again. I have nothing to hide, she said. Nick didn't believe her. He turned away, his reflection caught in the mirrored wall, two versions of himself staring back, the father desperate for justice, and the man who already knew that in Genoa City and Los Angeles alike, the truth always came with a body count. And as Kyle watched from the bar, his instincts sharpened. Whatever Sienna was protecting, it wasn't just Noah's past. It was something much deeper, something that could shatter both the Newman and Abbott families once it surfaced.